Hello, it's Heidi Dulabon, international cultural consultant and etiquette expert. And did you know in the Western world, there are two main ways to eat? How do you hold your knife and fork? Well, there's two main ways, the zigzag and the continental. In the East, we can add chopsticks, and chopsticks vary across different areas, regions in the East. But today we're talking about Western dining, and we have the zigzag method that is primarily used in the United States, in North America. And we have the continental method, which is used on the continent in Europe and in the UK. So what's the history? Well, briefly, historians believe that at one time we were all eating with the zigzag method, and then those upstarts, people moved to the new country, to America, and these Americans were using the zigzag method, what they'd learned at home when they came across the sea. Well, then the continental people, they said, we've got to distinguish ourselves. And so they chose a different way to hold their knife and fork to distinguish that they were maybe even of an upper class than those new upstart Americans. So a little bit of history. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what the historians say. A lot of work. Let's just say it, a lot of work. Okay, so we cut, knife goes down, switch hands, pick it up, boom, one bite. And then you have to start all over. It's a lot of work, zigging and zagging. Okay, what's another method? Well, the other method is called the continental. Okay, here's how they eat in the UK and the continent. So, pick up your knife and fork, same way, roll, you know how to hold them. But here's the difference. The knife stays in the right hand, the fork stays in the left hand. They do not zig or zag. So you cut something, and then you may, if you like, rest your knife. You may not. You may hold it in your hand. Fork stays in the left hand. You pick up what you cut and you bring it to your mouth with your left hand, tines down. Okay, but you say, but Heidi, what if I'm eating something like corn or mashed potatoes, or maybe peas, smushy peas? Well, in that case, you push the things onto the back of the tines of the fork with your knife. You push it onto your fork, and then you bring it up and you eat it. Let's put it into practice. Let's actually put something on the plate. Let's have a meal together, and we're going to practice what we just were taught, zigging and zagging. Let me prepare a little plate and we'll be back. Alrighty, so let's put into practice with some actual food, the zigzag method and the continental. Let's start with the zigzag method, the way the Americans eat. Let's just start with the little bit of meatloaf we have. I cut, holding it in place with my fork. I cut, and then I place my knife down to rest. Okay, watch my other videos. I go into in depth why you do this. Blade in. Now I've cut. Now the fork, we zig. Now let's zag. The fork goes from my left hand to my right hand, and then I bring the food to my mouth. Very nice. Excuse me. Thank you. Now the fork back to the left hand. Pick up the knife, and I can go on to my next bite. Let's say I'm going to have a little bit of the corn. I don't need to cut with the corn, so what I can do is just put the knife down. I can put my fork right to my right hand. That's what Americans do. The tines are pointing up. I get a little bit of the corn and I bring it directly to my mouth. As my mother used to say, God rest her soul, bring the food to your mouth, Heidi, not your mouth to the food. Remember that. Sit up straight. Be respectful. It's better for your digestion too, if you sit up straight. And then you bring the food to your mouth. Fork in the right hand. So if there's nothing to cut, let's say the mashed potatoes, I want a little bite of the mashed potatoes, I can do that with my right hand. Just get some to my mouth, food to my mouth. Now we're going to go to the continental method. I think it's a lot easier. once you get the hang of it. This zigging and zagging, I mean, gosh, we're burning up our calories while we're zigging and zagging, right? Okay, let's go on to the Continental, where the fork stays in the left hand, not the switching back and forth. Knife stays in the right hand. Okay, Continental method. Let's cut a little bit of the meatloaf. We cut just as we did with the Continental, holding our knife and fork properly, right? We know that. So we cut. Okay, now what? I can choose to hold the knife in my right hand to keep holding it, but the fork stays in the left hand. It goes directly to my mouth. The tines are pointed down, like so. Delicious. Okay, now let's get tricky. You say, all right, Heidi, but the zigzag was easier because my fork went to my right hand and the tines are up and I can just sort of scoop up what I want and eat with my right hand. Okay, now let's say we're gonna have something a little tricky. Let's have a little bit of the mashed potatoes. So, tines are down, Continental. My knife helps to push some of the mashed potatoes onto the back of the fork. I'm keeping my knife in my right hand, although if I wanted to, I could rest it. Same way. Now I bring the mashed potatoes to my mouth with my left hand. Fork stays in the left hand. I have pushed the food onto the back of the fork and it stays there. So let's try the tricky stuff, like how about some of the corn? You know, corn might be a little harder, right? Okay, so you get it onto, and you don't make a big smashing thing. You do this very discreetly, very, very gently. You do not need to be pushing. Do not do that. It's just the practice makes perfect, right? Just practice it. So I pushed on some corn, and now knife stays in the right, fork stays in the left. How about when you're finished? I'm finished with this meal. I've had everything. I put the 525 knife and fork diagonally across the plate. If I'm in the UK, it's straight up and down, and the wait staff knows I have signaled I'm finished. And what do you do at the very, very end of the meal when everyone gets up? You place your napkin to the left of where your plate had been, if it's still there. This means we are completely finished with this meal. I'm going to get up and leave. Okay, so I hope this helps, and let me know how it goes. What do you think? Do you zig? Do you zag? Are you Continental? How do you eat? I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please drop me a comment because I will answer your question. All right, thank you everyone. Happy eating, and as I always say, please be kind and subscribe and like the video and pass the word. Please, if you'd be so kind. Thank you.